Hello and welcome to Altitude, a show for youth and adults alike talking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics. Welcome back. And with me is Melvin Clark. Melvin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. So, Melvin, it is an honor to have you here.
Thanks.
I should say Mr. Clark, especially as distinguished of a gentleman as you are. And I understand that you are a vice president of a major financial services company.
That's correct.
And we're here to talk to the students about how you got there, what your education pathway is, and maybe what you like to do for fun or what your hobbies are.
Okay.
So why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you do today? What's your title and what do you do?
Okay. My official title is Vice President of IT for Allianz Investment Management. That is a subsidiary of Allianz Life. So basically, I'm the head of IT for a $149 billion investment firm.
That's huge.
Yes.
So for the youth out there watching and the other adults, you are the man. And it is very rare that we find an African American at such a senior level in an organization. And so that's one of our objectives here, is to show that there are many career paths that people can take, even above just being a developer or infrastructure person. So how did you get to the level? I know it's a loaded question, but what were the things that you did along your education pathway, or maybe your creative side, to get you to where you're at today?
Ironically, my education path doesn't match up with what I actually do today. When I was early on, I was planning to go to either law school or medical school. And I ended up getting a degree in business management. At that time, I was a preschool teacher and a kindergarten teacher for Seed Academy and Harvest Prep. I really enjoyed that process, but I've always been driven. You know, according to my mom, enough is never enough for me. So I switched careers because unfortunately, I needed to do something with a new young family, and I was actually processing claims. And we were paid by how many claims we actually completed. I noticed a pattern where I was entering the same information over and over and over. And I'm trying to hustle to make money for my family. So I printed out all the screens, spent the weekend redesigning all of the screens, creating a mapping document saying, if you enter this field, this is the fields that will populate later. That Monday, I went to the IT manager and said, if you did this, you'll increase throughput by 40%, and I can make more money, right? He looked at it, asked, what was my training, what was my background, had no formal IT training. Later that week, he offered me a job in IT, and that's what started my career.
Because there's whole disciplines, whole departments of education and areas that focus in on user interface and process flow and efficiencies, staffs of people, and here you put in a weekend's worth of work. But the difference is you actually did the work, right? And in many cases, we learn things, but we don't actually bring our personal experiences into it. And it makes it very amazing that you are doing what you're doing today. So you also have this creative side, right? So what other types of things inspire you? I mean, like outside of work or outside of life, when you're in your casual or personal time, what do you like to do? What are the important things that occur in your life that you love to do or your passion? Yeah,
I love art, I love photography, and I love travel. And I've been very fortunate that my career has supported travel, or you could say either or. Because of my creative side, I believe there's 14 or 15 patent applications. Some have already been granted. My first one is the one I'm the most proud about. But because of the appetite of solving and creativity, it's led me into different positions all around the world. So I've traveled to 6 of the 7 continents. I haven't been to Antarctica yet. Do
you really want to go? It's pretty cold down there.
I'm going to do it. It's on my bucket list, right? I've been very fortunate where I've been emboldened of not exactly know how I'm going to do something, but I've had the confidence to know that I can figure it out.
Sure.
And I'm atypical to a lot of executives where I've learned how to code in just about every major language, and I drive a vision of what I want invented. So that's where it's a little different. That's part of my job today is I sell a vision to my business colleagues. then I actually understand how to actually make that vision happen. And I can go toe-to-toe with my architects and my developers and really drive what I want to do. And so that's what landed me into this position that I'm currently in.
So as it relates to the youth, that is obviously a characteristic they must have, is pursue their passion.
Yes.
Right? Do you have any advice for young folks that are maybe in high school or maybe early career, thinking about what type of profession to go into, computer science majors, engineering?
Yeah, I would say definitely anything when it comes to computer sciences, because that's where the future is already at, and we're going to shift more. When it comes to personal advice, I typically mentor younger students and say, you only fail when you stop trying, right? Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Don't be afraid to try different things and own mistakes. I give them lessons of how I actually manage my personal life. I do a yearly self-review on my birthday every year. What I did, what I accomplished this year, what I did, what I could have improved on, what did work well, so I can actually keep doing those things, and what do I want to do next year, right? So driving yourself is probably the most important thing.
Let me ask you a question. I know we didn't prep for this, but what about life plan? Do you just look at, you do a self-review every year. How far out on the horizon do you actually plan?
I actually plan 20 years out all the time. So I have a 1-year, 5-year, and a 20-year plan. And I make adjustments on a yearly basis. And so, exactly, on my birthday. So it's infamous at work that I always take my birthday off, and they want to know what my plans are for the next year. And I like money, I like success, and I would do, before they called it vision boards, I came up with my own vision board saying, by the time I'm 30, I want to be making this much, I want this role. By the time I'm 40 and 50 and so forth, right? I want to be able to retire by the time I'm 55. I've already retired once, and I came out of retirement. So it's nice to be in a position to follow your passions and work because of your passions, not because you work to work, right?
Fantastic.
Yep.
Do you, in terms of the career titles in STEM-related fields, right? Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, any of the big name, data science. I've always been curious from your vantage point, being a senior executive at a major financial services company, what type of degrees or what type of jobs and careers, right? We don't want them to just have jobs, we want them to have rich and fruitful careers. Where do you think a student could invest their time in education at a younger age? So for example, there's a common trend out there to do certifications, then you have the 2-year degrees, and you have like the 4-year degrees. And so in the high schools, we actually talk about all 3 of them because that's kind of non-trad. But for who you're trying to hire, the future workforce, if you will, do you have any advice on what students might want to?
Yeah, it would really vary about where they want to go. So if they want to go into a more technical discipline, like cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, yes, computer science degrees, coupled with a liberal arts degree is really, really important. And I always stress communication classes, because if you can articulate what you're trying to sell, and if you don't believe that you're selling, you're constantly selling all the time. You're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas, you're selling your work, right? So if you're unable to do those things, it doesn't matter how gifted you are technically, right? So I typically try to find really great communicators, people who are not afraid to make mistakes, right? And a passion to learn, right? And oftentimes I will pass on someone who's maybe more technically certified than someone who actually has a passion about growing. Okay?
Well, Mr. Clark, I thank you for your time. Any final words, anything you'd like to share with our audience?
The only thing I would like to say to the audience is don't give up on yourself, right? So if you fall and it doesn't work out, pick yourself up and change your situation, change yourself.
Well, thank you for your time
thank
today.
You.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
And with me is Erin Rockmore. How are you doing, Erin?
I'm doing well.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you for taking your time out of your busy schedule to come
problem.
visit us here at the Altitude Show.
Okay.
And as you know, the program is designed for youth in high school as well as early career professionals, collegiates, that can learn about professionals like you and maybe choose to go into that particular career profession or degree. And so we thank you for taking your time here. Where do you work and what do you do?
So I work at Medtronic. I'm a chemist over there, and what I actually do is I do biomaterials testing, which means for any medical device that you can think of, we do chemical analysis, and we work with toxicologists to say what toxic or harmful chemicals may be leaching out of these products. And as they're developing these products, let them know if this is safe to be implanted into a patient, or, give them that type of information.
So you're the person who actually keeps us healthy and safe with these products.
Yeah, us in the FDA.
Well, you and the FDA, yes, but you're making sure that all those products, and there's a bazillion of them, right?
Yeah.
Is the best medical device manufacturing company in the universe. Absolutely. Tell me what got you interested into being a chemist, a biochemical engineer.
So in high school, I had a really amazing chemistry teacher. Ever since I can remember, since grade school, I loved science. So that was always going to be my path. Very early on, I wanted to be a doctor. And so when I went into college, that was what my plan was to be a doctor. And I went into chemistry in particular because I loved my chemistry teacher. He was just, I felt like he was a genius. I'm sure he didn't think so, but he just knew everything, had an answer for everything. I've always been really curious, so that was what led me into chemistry. And biology, as a comparison, I really like math. So chemistry is a marriage between math with science. Biology is a lot of memorization, not as much of the math. So that was kind of why I chose one over the other.
Oh, fantastic. For someone who has a passion and a curiosity for things, it sounds like you were able to leverage that. How did you decide that Medtronic or a company like that was going to fit into your career?
Well, as you know, in Minnesota, there are a lot of medical device manufacturers. So before I was at Medtronic, I came from 3M, and I worked in their dental research division.
Okay.
And so kind of related to the medical device manufacturing, but I worked on dental crowns, dental filling materials. And so within material science, it's all kind of related. And you'll see the same materials across different multiple uses. So working at Medtronic, there was an opportunity there, and I've heard a lot of great things about Medtronic, and they've proven to be true, so I'm happy where I am.
Yeah, we love 3M, we love them all, but I'm more fascinated about Medtronic because that's where you work now, and the great work that they've been able to do, and also these devices that go into our bodies to save our lives. And so with all this fascinating career, because I'm actually enthralled in this conversation.
Okay.
However, what specific degree, remind me, what specific degree do you have?
So I have a BA in chemistry.
Okay. You said you wanted to be a doctor, possibly many other things. How did you go about picking the degree and picking maybe the school that you went to?
So I went to Michigan State University.
Shout out. Yep, okay.
And that wasn't my first choice, but I had family there.
Okay.
And my dad was actually a professor at the time, so I got reduced tuition. So that was really what led me there.
Sure.
However, I had an amazing college experience. But picking chemistry, again, it was back to that chemistry teacher who really made chemistry fun and interesting. And I knew coming out of high school that I was going to major in chemistry. And when I was in school, although it was rare for you to go on to medical school with a chemistry degree, now it's really popular that people will major in chemistry over biology.
What would you advise young persons that have a curiosity for certain types of sciences? What can they do today to get involved? Like science, were there science clubs at your high school, or?
Not particularly at my high school, but there were a lot of programs. I'm from Detroit originally, so there were a lot of programs around the city. There was a program named DAPSEP, and I was a part of that in middle school, in high school, and it was a Saturday program, and it just provided exposure to all types of things. So I got a chance to work on, it was more earth science projects, but I'm a true lover of science. So for me, I love any type of science. I love learning about any of the sciences, not particularly one over the other. So I did have that exposure. earlier on, and yeah, it just really fostered that.
Yeah. So as it relates to the students, what is your passion about introducing STEM to youth? Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I do feel as a person of color working in a STEM field and acknowledging that there are a few of us in the field, that it is my responsibility to give them exposure, you know, in any way that I can, and make myself visible to them so that they can see that, you know, it's not what you see on TV. You think it's like, you know, somebody in a lab coat,
CSI,
holed up in a
right,
lab.
or
Yeah,
whatever,
it's not really like
NCS,
that. It's all kinds of people that choose these professions. And so I do feel a personal responsibility to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're definitely a shining star, a model of brilliance when it comes to this type of degree, this
Thank
type
you.
of work, this type of impact to our society, because it's very rare we actually get to meet the person who keeps us safe,
Yeah.
right? It's just some big building that does medical things, and even for me as an adult, you know, we don't often get a chance to meet the people that actually make a change in society. And so because of your work and because of your interest in giving back to the youth, we appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
we thank you very much for taking your time. Are there any parting words to the youth maybe advice you'd like to share?
Absolutely. One bit of advice that I like to give is to just keep going. You know, sometimes when you're young, especially if you aren't as confident in, you know, is this the right choice for me? What seems like a roadblock is really not as big of a roadblock as you first think. So just keep going, just keep trying, and eventually you'll get there.
Yeah. Welcome back. And with me is Justice Sikakani. How are you doing, sir?
Dr. Michael Wolf, I'm doing phenomenal.
Fantastic,
Yeah.
fantastic. Thank you for keynoting the Youth STEAM Showcase, where it's an honor to have you here
Absolutely.
and share your wealth of experience and knowledge with our students. So the Altitude Show is all about high school students learning from professionals, from adults, and from their peers on STEM and STEAM-related activities that they belong to. So today we're going to talk a little bit about your career, your education, and your lifestyle, and how that relates to the youth, and how they can watch you and see you and all these fantastic, marvelous opportunities that you've had, and what makes you tick. So the first question is, if you could tell us your title and what you do today with the Hennepin Theater Trust.
Yeah. So great questions. Today I work for Hennepin Theater Trust. We're a nonprofit organization located downtown Minneapolis. My title is IT Manager. Mm-hmm. My roles and responsibilities are essentially to lead the organization in understanding what is possible and what is capable through technology. Mm-hmm. So every organization will have defined requirements and objectives, and those will usually translate to strategic organizational goals. Mm-hmm. So as an IT leader, it's my job to say, how do we do that effectively, and how do we use technology as a catalyst? Mm-hmm. One of the things in this day and age that continues to be a trending topic is data. Mm-hmm. So we have an abundance of data at our fingertips, right? So how do we use practices like artificial intelligence to catalyze what we do with that data, and craft messaging that says, here's what we know and here are some of the desirable outcomes we'd like to achieve? So today I manage a partnership with a local organization based out of St. Paul that manages our entire infrastructure. So when you think of infrastructure in the traditional sense, that's essentially, help desk, system administration. These are different roles in this day and age around technology. So I lead all of that today. And then I also am responsible for the thought leadership associated with where we're going in the future and how emerging technology will continue to be a catalyzing factor in how businesses shift in the 21st century. So it's a lot of what I do for Hennepin Theater Trust today.
Yeah, that's a lot, because, old school IT manager from back in the day. So you have this really incredible job right now, career. What prepared you for that? How did you end up here today? I mean, the Reader's Digest version, but did you always, when you were younger, did you say, oh, I want to go into IT, I want to do all these things?
Yeah.
How'd you get here?
That's a great question. I think leaning in on what you're innately good at and what you're passionate is one of these things we're constantly trying to find and discover in our adolescence. Mm-hmm. So I was always great with technology. So anytime, I'm young enough and old enough to remember the VCR era, the VHS, right? Be kind, please rewind, that kind of thing. And anytime we had any audio-visual needs or concerns in the household, it was always left to me to figure it out, right? What cables do I need to connect? And I didn't really understand that, Dr. Wolf, until I got maybe into my later adolescent years, in which I started realizing that I had this desire to build things. So I built my first desktop PC, ordered the motherboard, the RAM, the hard drive, put it all together, and that would end up becoming my system that I used my freshman year of college. Loaded the Windows operating system, and it was a fully functioning system, right, that I had built from scratch based on all the components I had ordered. I think it was at that point that I started to conceptualize that being able to build a computer or even have the passion to want to build one wasn't something that resonated with all of my peers. So then that started telling me this might be a distinct skill set or passion that you have. Well, how can I lean in on that more? And I found myself in computer sales, working for Best Buy, and it became a very easy, and natural learning curve for me to sell computers, because I was able to sell the value of what this computer can do for your household or your student or whatever. And then I took a leap and jumped into my first corporate job. I was working for Allianz Insurance Company of North America, and I was an IT help desk associate, which for those listening is just a very glorified way of saying I was doing a lot of password resets, 50 calls a day, here's how you reset your password. And from that, I started learning a lot of the core systems that drive our organizations today. And I just started building on that. And it wasn't until I got to working for a great privately held organization in our backyard, Cargill, I was presented with an opportunity to come in as a systems analyst. And my job, Dr. Wolf, was to manage a portfolio of legacy-based applications.
Okay.
And we called them KLO, keeping the lights on. But essentially, the strategic roadmap of those applications were to migrate into an enterprise-wide system, SAP, that we were invested in. And once I started to understand what an application looked like and how it drove efficiency and effectiveness for our employee base, I started saying, well, how can I understand how that data moves? And it just became this fascinating unveiling of what was possible. And my manager at the time came to me early on in my career when I was working for Cargill and said, there's this thing called Salesforce. And we know nothing about it, but we'd like to send you out to go get trained and learn about it. So they sent me to San Francisco. This was my first ever work trip, not on my dime. And they sent me to San Francisco, and I was just in my early 20s. I was working for a great company. I'm in San Francisco for the first time in my life. And as I'm thinking about this, what I was so inspired by was the fact that I was working for a company that sent me out to San Francisco. And at this point, all I knew about San Francisco was what was in the movies. And I was learning this new platform that would be considered emerging tech. Salesforce has only been around since 1999. And they invested in me, and I learned it. And I came back to Cargill, and I demonstrated what I had learned. And I started immediately putting into form what I could do for the organization based on this acquired knowledge. I became a subject matter expert. And after doing several projects and initiatives with this newfound understanding of this emerging tech, years went by and I found myself being categorized as a thought leader. I'm only in my late 20s, right?
Absolutely.
And now I'm being invited to speak at these conferences. What do you do at Salesforce? What do you do with technology? How are you an industry expert? What does that look like for what you do at Cargill? All these questions were being positioned back at me. And I realized, Dr. Wolf, that it wasn't something I had to fabricate. It was just natural understanding that I had acquired over years. And I started sharing my experiences, and folks started getting inspired by that. And more importantly, the measurable impact stemmed from the communities that I was represented in, right? Socioeconomically challenged communities on, here's this African-American kid, ears pierced, just a go-getter, and he's leading all of these conversations and talking at these conferences. How did he do it? And I've just been very dedicated to giving that blueprint, because the more I can help another individual aspire and inspire them, the more we'll continue to see that workforce development is really about providing access and opportunity, and technology is where that starts.
Exactly, and that's why we wanted to have you here, because that is an incredible, incredible story. I mean, that's fact, right? I can't really offer any more. You are a one-man show, definitely, and your history, your career experience says it all. Before we break, what do you like to do? You have this incredible career. I know you have a passion for technology, but somewhere in there, are there other things that you like to do in addition to tech?
Yeah, two things come to mind immediately, so I'll just roll with that. I love spending time with my kids, and I love seeing them. I have a 7-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they're at a very interesting age where they're just soaking in everything, and little things inspire them, right? My daughter loves Maya Moore, and we're Lynx season ticket holders for the Lynx, Lexus courtside, so sure, we're right there. And just being able to help them recognize their boundless potential in all things that they do, it just gives me so much life. And even seeing my mother now as a grandmother and seeing how that's such a beautiful process for her helps me realize what it was like when she was raising me and my siblings. And then the other thing I like to do is, I frequent the gym often, and just being in good health and wealth, and I know this is something you've been on a journey of too, kudos to you. It gives me a lot of time to just think, and it gives me a lot of time to just really not really be in the zone on all the different things that I'm involved in from a technological perspective, or even from a time investment with, kids are very demanding, which I love. But when I'm in the gym, it's kind of, I'm just me, yeah. So.
I totally get that. That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Justice. Thank you for coming on the show out of your busy schedule. And any parting words, any advice to that aspiring high school student?
Yeah, I would say right now is the best time to be in technology. Right now is the best time to witness what is happening in our global economy. There are a lot of companies and there are a lot of roles and positions that are being birthed within the last 5 to 10 years because our economy is going through what is referred to as a fourth industrial revolution. There's a lot of emerging tech. So find those individuals in your ecosystem that can help you along that journey, because becoming what I am today isn't anything that's impossible. I went down this journey in 2016 of learning what Salesforce and emerging tech is, and I am where I am today. And I've met so many phenomenal people, from Satya Nadella to Michelle Obama to Mark Cuban. I mean, it's been unbelievably inspiring to be where I'm at today, and it's all because of me leaning in on technology. So aspire to inspire and find that exemplary leader in your ecosystem. It'll change your life.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for joining us on Altitude.
Absolutely. Thank you.